But just before I go to the members, I just want to, I suppose, focus in on your first bullet point there. To promote and safeguard public animal, plant health, animal welfare for the benefit of consumers, producers, the economy and wider society. So as we had our committee meeting here last week, and I and it is an awful lot of other members expressed grave disappointment at what happened in that horse slaughter plant. And it has done the country as a whole a lot of reputational damage. But I think it was horrific to see what was happening under what we would consider the surveillance of the department. And, it just shouldn't happen. And there's a lot of remedial work to be done to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I asked a couple of questions here the last evening, which I felt I didn't get satisfactory answers to. And there's a significant amount of horses out there at the moment. Leave the welfare issue to one side for the moment. But there's a significant amount of horses out there at the moment that have been microchipped. And they are, in my view, a significant amount of them are entering the food chain. And they're leaving this jurisdiction and going elsewhere and getting paperwork and finding their way into the food chain either in the UK or on the continent. And how can we have a confidence in a system that allows a percentage of the animals in that sector, the horse sector, not to be microchipped? And in bovine, there's 100% compliance. If you're having an animal tagged within 21 days, you'll get a fairly stiff letter from the department, and it's working exceptionally well. But this, in my view, is a time bomb waiting to go off. And I think we have to learn lessons from the programme, the primetime programme that we saw. But for me personally, as a TD, my patience with people not complying with legislation that's there has run out. In my constituency, we had 3 accidents with horses in the last couple of months, with motorists and passengers, seriously injured in cases. None of those horses that were involved in those accidents were microchipped. And it's a situation that just can't be allowed to continue. Now that's from a road safety point of view. And and Bill will know it well. There's Bornamona lands in my constituency, and there's a huge herd of horses roaming them, and they're on other public lands. We have the same around Clonmel. They're on lands owned by the HSE there, roaming. But they're being, the road safety issue is one issue with them. But them horses are being moved on, they're being sold, no traceability, no nothing, and they're finding their way into the food chain. And it's at a point now where, if you keep an animal, the legislation is there, and the legislation has to be enforced. Now, the welfare issues that were in the factory, they were just horrific. But we'd have a significant amount of welfare issues with horses around the place. And like I said here today this evening, the amount of horses that have been lifted has been greatly reduced. And we had about 2 hours of voting the last week, and I wasn't able to come back on the statement when it was made, because the meeting, we had a very prolonged period of voting. But in my county, the resources hadn't been put into lifting these horses. So you said the numbers have fallen down, but if you don't put the resources into lifting them and impounding them, the figures are going to come down. And I had a constituent on to me today again, who is being harassed by these horses. Well, when I say harassed, they're trespassing on our property, and there's serious welfare issues with the horses as well. But to my mind, how can we horse meat isn't eaten, isn't on many menus in this country, but Irish horse meat is on menus across the EU, and we have a significant number of them horses here that have no traceability. And I think, we have to learn lessons in the primetime programme. As I said, the welfare was one, and what happened in the factory. And look, we gave that a very good airing here last Thursday, or last Wednesday evening. And as I said, we were extremely disappointed at what happened, and at how it could be allowed to happen. And we had the department in here 3 years previously that told us there was a 51-page document about how things should be carried out in a slaughter plant. Like, how much mind having a 51-page document and those kind of incidents happening in a lairage. But leaving aside, as I said, the welfare and what happened in that factory, and there is investigations going on, but the lack of compliance with a certain amount of the horse population, in my view, it has to be tackled, and it has to be tackled immediately.
Okay, thanks, Deputy. So, first of all, I think we were all horrified by what we saw on that primetime programme. There's no doubt about that, and it's very disappointing. It's very important we say that Ireland has an excellent food safety system and a food safety record across all of the species. That's a very important thing to say. But it's clear that in the case of horses, despite, I think, compliance with EU rules and the EU framework, that we have a system that's capable of circumvention if people are determined to do it. And there's nothing about this that doesn't require a root and branch review, I think. So, I mean, we're certainly convinced that that needs to be done. There are a number of strands to it, I think. So there are the welfare issues that we saw. I don't want to say too much about those. I mean, it's really, really important that I don't say anything here that might prejudice the ongoing investigation. And that isn't a defensive point. It's a sincere point that I don't want to say anything that prejudices that. In terms of what we saw on the programme, those welfare issues, we didn't see them taking place in the slaughter plant. I think it's important to say that. So there are welfare issues here. The second thing is there are traceability issues, and people have an obligation to register horses, to have a passport, to microchip them. So that's a legal obligation that people have, and there may be people out there who don't comply with those requirements. But what's critically important, I think, is that where there are instances of non-compliance, that those horses can't get into the food chain. And I think what we saw in the programme suggests that it's possible to circumvent that system, and we have to look at how we can fix it. And I think, like, there are three tests for me. One is whatever we do has to be lawful. We have to make sure that we're doing the right thing here from a legal perspective. The second thing is it has to be effective. So we could throw a whole lot of stuff at this now very, very quickly, and it may not work. So I want to be sure it's effective when we do it. And the third thing is that if there are unintended consequences, I want to understand what the unintended consequences are. So what we've done is we've asked Professor Paddy Wall to join a group in the department to examine these issues very, very quickly and come up with quick solutions, as many as we can, as quickly as we can. Some of them will require engagement at Commission level and with other member states, because clearly there's an international aspect to this. Horses are being transported overseas, and it's important to improve traceability across those borders. But just to say, it is lawful to export horses. It is lawful to have horses slaughtered. There are lawful means of disposing of horses. But the practices we saw in that programme didn't meet those standards. So I think we have to deal with all of those things. And it is a wake-up call. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And we're determined to deal with it as quickly as we can. But we want to do it properly.
Thanks, Mr. Deason.